Good morning. My name is Melinda Haring, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Atlantic Council Eurasia Center here in Washington, D.C. Good afternoon to those who are watching our broadcast in Europe and in Kiev. Today's panel, Is Humanitarian Assistance Reaching Ukraine? Is going to be a great conversation. We're so pleased to have Olga Stefanishyna, Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine for Europe and Euro-Atlantic integration. Welcome, Olga. I also have Hlib Shmahal, who's the co-founder and head of IT for SPDM. It's a great organization that's doing really important humanitarian work in Ukraine. I have my great friend Andriy Stavnitser, who is the head of TIS in Yuzhny Ukraine and co-founder of Help Center Ukraine. And finally, I have Michael Bociurkiw, who is a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center and all over CNN. And I hope you're catching his broadcast. He's doing a great job from Lviv. Welcome to everyone. We are going to have a great conversation. This is a super important topic. People, Americans, Europeans, Ukrainians have, and Poles especially, and Lithuanians have opened their wallets, their homes, and their hearts to the needs of Ukrainians. But the big question is aid getting to the right people? Is it getting there fast enough? So that's what this session is all about. And we brought together people who are delivering assistance and also the government and an independent commentator to help us uncover this question. Olga, welcome. It's great to see you. Let's go help us set the scene. So more than 20% of Ukrainians have left their homes. 11 million have left. 5.7 million have gone to neighboring countries. A lot of them have gone to Poland, and 6.5 million are displaced within Ukraine. The UN expects 8 million to leave the country by Christmas. I have several questions for you. What are the biggest needs for those who remain behind in Ukraine? And do you expect more than 8 million to leave by Christmas, or is that figure about right? Olga, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Very good to see all of your colleagues. We've been, with most of you, we've been in touch for all the time. And I would just put a bit of different focus on that. Since the first hours of war, we've been in touch as a government and as a leadership of my country with nearly all the leaders of the democratic world. And we have managed to face enormous amount of support and humanitarian aid, but also in hosting Ukrainian people in your capitals, those who have been fleeing from Ukraine abroad, and those supporting those who has been displaced within the country. We have basically in the first 10 to 15 days of the war managed to establish all necessary logistics to provide Ukrainian people with necessary goods. First and foremost, these were the food products, elements of the basic need. But now the war is ongoing. We are advocating for a greater engagement of the international organizations, like the organizations of the UN system, to streamline the assistance to these regions, and basically to those regions where we have the full control of the Ukrainian authorities over. We have a very well organized chain of logistics, and people are insured with all the necessary needs. At this stage, it's important for us to make sure that the political efforts are, let's say, enhanced to make sure that Ukrainian and international humanitarian assistance are provided to those regions which are now controlled by Russian Federation, and the agreement on the humanitarian corridors is essential here. For us, it's also important that negotiations with Russia are also covering the element of evacuation of those people who are now in the areas controlled by Russian Federation, like Kherson, some areas of Donetsk and Lugansk regions, to make sure the people are able to leave the territory and to stay safe on the territory of Ukraine. So this is very important, because unless there is an agreement on the humanitarian corridors, we're not able to provide people with all the necessary needs. Although our permanent monitoring of the military situation allows us to identify the areas which are basically under threat of potential occupation, and we do sort of a contingency planning, making sure that in case of any unfortunate development of the military scenario, people are provided with the food sets, daily nutrition sets, and have the amount of food and daily needs ensured for sort of period until they're brought back and liberated by Ukrainian army. For us, it was very important that from the first day, as it was starting from 2014, when the annexation of Crimea and the war started in Donetsk and Lugansk region, we have a very well mobilized and organized civil society and volunteers who has been providing a lot of support and humanitarian assistance by themselves. From the very beginning, we have made a decision that Ukrainian government is not going to get involved in this activity, because this is again one of the most successful cases in Ukraine, and this community is to some extent even more organized and prepared than the government. We made a couple of decisions facilitating the process of customs control, and we've managed to establish the green corridors for the humanitarian aid, and this has also made the process of access faster and allowed us to lift all the barriers. And now when European Union and Great Britain has lifted all the custom duties and quotas for different products, it is now on a bilateral level. So the ability to mobilize this assistance is getting much easier. But we're a very pragmatic politicians. We understand that the initial energy and call for action in the beginning of war has allowed us to mobilize enormous amount of humanitarian assistance throughout the world, which has been mobilized from business community, from citizens of different countries across the world, the Ukrainian diaspora, and etc. But these resources are exhaustive ones. Some of the capitals are doing the support on a permanent basis, but some of the countries like US, for example, like Great Britain, many other countries, has invested and directed their resources to sponsor institutions like International Red Cross organization, like organizations of the UN system, to provide and ensure that humanitarian needs are ensured in Ukraine. To be frank, it has taken a bit longer for us to adjust and organize the process with UN system, and we were not very much satisfied with the speed and the amount of assistance which has been mobilized by UN, which has been not comparable to the resources which has been allocated to these organizations. But at this stage, we have identified the problem, if it might be called this way. What was the problem with that regard? And this is something we're proud of, because basically it is a unique situation where UN is operating in a country of war, where which has preserved the full governance of all public institutions, ensured all the necessary social payments and social obligations of the state implement, fully functioning banking and financial sector, and fully operational registers. So this has not been nearly the case in any kind of country of war. UN has been implementing their operations before. So, and we have spent quite a time in adjusting this format, just showing that the UN system of humanitarian relief is unable to work on a normal scenarios, because we have the operational government, the payments we are releasing ourselves, the assistance we manage ourselves, and we have to work together to avoid overlapping and to ensure that we target those categories of people who need to be targeted. So far, this has been a long process. We didn't have time for, and this caused a lot of frustrations on our side. But now all elements of this puzzle has been put on together, and we have a very good way to go. And I cannot but
Olga, let me stop you there. That's a really, really important point. I'm so glad you brought that up, because Ukraine is different than a lot of other countries where the UN and international organizations have worked, because the infrastructure is still in place, because the banking system is still in place, and international organizations are going to have to grapple with that. I'm so glad you mentioned Ukraine's amazing volunteers, Olga. I have a couple of them on this call. I want to bring in Hlib. Hlib, you are a new name to me. You're welcome to the Atlantic Council. Tell us about SPDM. It's a new center, it's a coordination center, and it was established by the president. Tell us more about it. I know you were built on March 5th. Where are you working? You have about 400 volunteers. What are you guys doing? Tell us more about this. And Doug, if you could drop the link in the chat, please go ahead. Go ahead, Hlib, the floor is yours.
Hello, Melinda, and hello, colleagues. It's nice to meet you here, and thank you for such an opportunity to bring our experience and share it with you and with the US and with the world, actually. So SPDM were launched with a cooperation between the Office of the President of the Ukraine, the Ministry of Youth and Sport, other ministries, and of course the volunteers movement, which is pretty powerful in Ukraine. So we launched SPDM as a platform and as a project made a goal to increase the effectiveness of how we operate in the humanitarian aid getting inside the country, especially humanitarian aid which getting by the volunteer movement inside the Ukraine and outside the Ukraine. So as you said, we start on the, actually the idea were brought like on the 1st of March, and we gathered the team from the scratch, and on the 5th of March, we launched our website. But website, this is just a part of our project. So we have a warehouse management system, which is an IT solutions, which were provided by the Ukrainian startup. And there are a lot of Ukrainian startups who are currently involved in solving the humanitarian crisis here in Ukraine. So by these tech solutions, we are able here provide our donors with a transparency, first of all. So how many humanitarian help we receive on our warehouses and how we gave it to the people who is in need. The second one, we receive the applications all over the country, and there are more than 100,000 applications our project received during this period of time. And by that, we can provide donors and organizations with a statistic and data information, what kind of needs in a specific region or even in a specific city. And currently, we even launch, going forward, we launch a solution to unite other humanitarian projects. There are more than only a SPDM, there are other volunteers with their projects who provide humanitarian help. So we're trying to gather all the data in one center to analyze it like globally all over the country, to understand the situation and to make our decision about the humanitarian help where it goes more accurate, and again provide the donors and other stakeholders with this information. We're working on that. So, and what else I would like to add you to more understand the SPDM. So SPDM, this is like core team which has an IT and operational team, and we have more than 23 hubs all around the country. We opened them during this period, and we are operating with them by providing them with the logistics services so deliver the humanitarian help inside the country. And we even launching the last mile delivery. So we able to deliver a specific humanitarian help to those people who cannot go to the warehouse. Unfortunately, there are more and more people like elders and who wandered.
Yeah, give us an example. What are you guys mostly delivering? Is it mattresses? Is it medicine? Is it tourniquets?
There are top 3 categories which currently in our applications we see. So first of all, this is food.
Okay.
The second one is medicine, and the third one is hygiene. These top 3 categories we operate in currently. So, and the food is like the majority of that.
Okay.
So, and we preparing the food complex, which include a food for 3 people, probably for like a little family. So we provide people with this complex. So.
And you guys are working in 23 different centers in Ukraine, is that right?
Yes.
What?
And we work in these centers thanks to Ministry of Young and Sport, and we operated. So SPDM, actually, this is a Ukrainian word which can be translated like doing things together. It's about cooperation. And this is our core value, to helping from people to people and cooperate. And actually SPDM is so effective thanks to cooperation of volunteers, thanks to initiative and cooperation with the government, with the ministries, with the office of the president, and the big business. I think about the big business, actually, Andriy will tell you more. But for this cooperation, all of this works effectively.
Philippe, you have a lot of Americans, Canadians, Europeans watching. What can we do to help your organization? I mean, I can't deliver humanitarian aid. I'm in Washington, D.C., right? But beyond give money, do you want money or do you want physical objects?
Actually, there are 2 options. First of all, you can provide the humanitarian help to the projects who, in your example, like Help Ukrainian Center, and they will deliver to us. And the second one, of course, money, so donations, because currently we are, as Olga said, a lot of businesses, a lot of systems here, institutions here in Ukraine works. So we are able to buy the humanitarian resources, to buy foods here inside the country. And when you donate to us and we start buying this inside the country, you're not only helping those people who in need, you're also helping to relaunch our economy, which is definitely very important currently during the war.
I love that idea. And this is an organization, if you haven't had a chance, get on their website. All the big businesses are involved in Ukraine, USAID, IREX, UNDP, all the ministries. It has a lot of trust. So it's a great organization. I really encourage you to look into it. Thank you for everything you're doing, Gleb. Thanks for being here. Andriy, thanks for being patient. So Andriy Stavnitser is a professional logistician in his previous life, and he's the owner of the largest private port in Odessa. And he knows how to move stuff really, really well. But he stopped his business on February 24th, and you founded something called Help Center Ukraine. Can you tell us more about that? I understand you have 3 warehouses in Poland and you're moving aid across the country. What are you moving, and how can Americans and Canadians help, Andriy?
Thanks, Melinda. Thanks for having us here. Well, we founded this chain of warehouses where we receive humanitarian aid from all over the world. It's called www.helpukraine.center, and you can find all information online. But essentially, we're getting the humanitarian aid from all over, and then together with SPDM, together with Olga Stefanishyna, together with the Ministry of Health and with the military, we are sending this goods, be it food or clothes or medication or personal hygiene. We're sending it to the locations where it's needed the most. And to top up on the SPDM topic, I would like to say that I really enjoy working with them because I get a lot of feedback from the people actually on the ground where they deliver it, because they do the very important part. They do the last mile. So we bring massive amounts of help to the major cities. And from there, SPDM is taking it with their volunteers and bringing it physically to the people in the basement or in a hospital or elsewhere. And we receive feedback, what is needed most in every region. And that's perfectly done with SPDM. I've been trying to reach, obviously, the amount of humanitarian aid is decreasing because, corporations and people from all over the world, they can do 1, 2, or 3 shipments. But then this resource gets exhausted. And this is when large multinational humanitarian organizations should step in. So I spent the last month getting them on board, and I will not be as diplomatic as Madam Deputy Prime Minister. I must say it was very frustrating experience on getting large multinational organizations to start delivering goods, because they are very poorly organized. Nobody takes responsibility. they deliver very little amount of goods, and that these goods are essentially needed now in Ukraine. And organizations like the International Red Cross are a disgrace, and they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, but the amount of actual help is really minimal. So I must say this was a frustrating experience. And yes, this is with existing current government, which is actually making their life much easier. And everybody in the government, starting from Olga, well, actually starting from the president, all the way, are helping them to get the humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And they still coordinate the coordinators and organize the organizers. I mean, it's been very frustrating. Otherwise, people from the US and Canada, I suggest, if you're watching us, I suggest please donate money. It is too expensive to send goods from the States. It is too expensive to go across the ocean. For this money, we can buy stuff that is needed the most now, especially things like insulin that are needed suddenly when, for example, the warehouses of reserves of insulin were bombed. So now all of a sudden, we have a lack, so we have to push hard and get more of this stuff for people with diabetes. So I urge you to go online and donate to the trusted organizations. Don't donate to International Red Cross. That's my personal opinion. And Slava Ukraini, hopefully we will win. For sure we will win.
Thank you so much. Andriy, say a little bit more about Olga's point. She said that the UN and big international organizations are having trouble in Ukraine because you guys are different. You have a banking system that works, you have a government in place, and you have logistical networks that work. Is that the problem, that the international community doesn't get the difference? What's the problem in your experience?
I really don't understand, Melinda. It's a great question. I would assume that having a running government and all institutions and bodies in place and intact, companies like Ukrzaliznytsia, which is Ukrainian railway, ministries, etc., everybody in place and running the show, it should be much easier for the UNs of this world to operate in the country, because normally they operate in a country with conflicting regime, or without any government at all, or with the military command in place. So I would assume it would make things easier for them, but apparently not. They are organized like a group of teenagers or volunteers that have no clue how to get stuff going and how to distribute it, and we need to receive massive volumes right now. They should be delivering it, and they are not. It's really a disgrace, and I urge every viewer or listener of your program, Melinda, to try and increase pressure towards those organizations and get them to move humanitarian aid into Ukraine and try and actually report good results.
Absolutely. I want to dig into that a little bit more. Olga's about to leave. I want to give Olga, Michael, I am going to come to you. I'm so sorry. Just give me one more minute. Olga, I know you need to leave, and we wanted to talk about the educational system and also about refugees. But if you have any other, I had two more questions for you. So most of Ukrainians' children have gone abroad, and they're studying in Poland, Lithuania, countries where Ukrainian is not the language. What's the plan for keeping Ukrainian language up? What's the plan for education? And then my other question for you was, have we, the Friends of Ukraine, done enough for Ukrainian refugees? My country's only taking in 100,000. Any thoughts on those or anything else? The floor is yours, Olga.
Yeah, I will just quickly drop in with the last Andrey's intervention, basically because what he is saying and what I'm saying is just the same. It's just that UN has to readjust. We're not the country to which you have to drop off the bags from the helicopter for people to get it. So you understand this, and we're here, three of us, like we are the operational governance here, representing civil society, business, and the government itself. So you just have to come here and make sure that we can utilize all the instruments you have to make sure that people get what they need, whether it's buying products from Ukrainian companies and supporting economy, why it's financing civil society who can get access to where UN and Russians can get access, or it's supporting the government with disbursing payments. It's just like total readjustment. I want to deliver some very important messages, because the longer the war is lasting, progressing, the more questions and problems we will face on the tactical level. And according to UN themselves, already 20% of the world population suffer from the war which has been started today, and it is only the beginning of the global food crisis. I hear phone calls from my friends in Slovakia, Czechia, and Brussels, and they say immediately, if we found out that we do not have a sunflower oil in our supermarkets, it does not exist there at all, and many of the things will be affected. So the war should be over. Russia should be recognized as a terrorist state, and we urge the Parliament, the Senate, the Congress and the Senate of the United States to take this decision and to make sure that the pressure and the sanctions and the restrictions to Russia are growing harder, that their economy is suffering, but not our economy and not our people are suffering. And that would really end up many of the process. Speaking of the people, we do not call them refugees because in fact they're not refugees. They got the temporary protection in European countries, and EU in fact has done a marvelous job, because just in 2 hours after the war started, I made a call to the European Commissioner Ylva Johannes, and she said, Olga, all the borders are open. People were allowed to leave, and we just had a phone call yesterday where we coordinate the policy among all EU countries around the continent, and we again, as operational governments, ensuring the education, the online education, like in COVID times, for all Ukrainian people, regardless to where they were placed, whether it's beyond Ukrainian borders or within Ukraine. So we are ensuring that our people, our children, our students can get the education by the end of the year. And we take the leverage of the 3 months of summer to prepare ourselves for the 1st of September, when the new year will start. Hopefully we will overcome before the time, and this will be only plans, but in case our unconditional victory will not take place over the summer, it will take place a bit later. We will be prepared by the 1st of September, and I think those countries across Atlantic should be oriented on our experience of working with EU, because this would be the best like consensual scenario for everybody. So, but regardless the conditions which will be placed in each and every country, each of Ukrainian children going to school or to the university have access to Ukrainian education via various online platforms. And those people who has been displaced within the country, they also have access to physical education, and we've readjusted the whole education processes to make sure that they have access to schools and etc. and etc. So here we're a bit more confident, but what we see, and this would be the last message from my side, that the ultimate majority of those people who was forced to leave the territory of Ukraine are desperately willing to come back. And we have now regained the control over a big part of Ukrainian territory, not only the west of Ukraine. And we are now working actively on the concept of rebuilding or building Ukraine back again. And this is the process which requires a couple of urgent things. Covering the budget deficits through flow of the liquidity, and it's needed to be done as soon as possible and as long as it is needed until we need this. And this would require mobilization of 3 billion of US dollars per month approximately, and EU hopefully will take the lead on that. And rebuilding Ukraine at this moment in the areas where we regain the control over the territories at this stage, and taking a broader leadership in rebuilding Ukraine, which is also part of the assistance and the Marshall Plan. We have established, and President yesterday announced, the United 24 Foundation, which will be running all of the file, but European Union has already declared the political and global leadership in rebuilding Ukraine back again, and this would be closely aligned with our future membership to European Union. And even though we're targeting the transatlantic audience now, it is not less important that your engagement in this process is very strong. Thank you so much.
Olga, before you go, I want to say thank you for your leadership. You've been incredible. And I'm so happy for you guys that people are getting out of Mariupol. Congratulations to you and your government. And finally, I hope that you will write up your notes, give your notes to one of your assistants and have it write it up, and let's publish it in English, because what you said today was very, very important. God bless you and keep at it. You're doing amazing work. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was very good to talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael, thank you so much for your patience. I am eager to hear what you have to say. So you are on the ground in Lviv. You recently went to Kiev and to Bucha. And what are you hearing in your conversations with people? What do people need the most? And is Olga right? Are people really committed to coming back once they leave? Do you agree with that?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, actually, I went to Kiev and then to Chernihiv. Chernihiv, of course, was very badly damaged during the Russian occupation there. I'm muted, sorry. But yeah, what people are telling me there is housing, housing, and housing. You see, because of the ferocity of the Russian bombing, you have whole communities that have been completely flattened. And then some. The areas that I saw on the fringes of Chernihiv, I described that to a hurricane, a wildfire, and a war on top of it. That's how brutal and how complete the devastation was. So it's going to take a lot to rebuild those communities, because don't forget, you also have a lot of mines and unexploded ordnance, and that takes special expertise and a lot of time to rebuilding. So that's why we're probably going to be faced with a scenario where a lot of the folks from there aren't going to be able to go back anytime soon, which is why we need temporary inclusive communities built here in safer places like Western Ukraine. I have to say, I was so impressed today. I spent most of the day with an organization called kohata.org. I'll put it in the link. Their co-founder is going to be on Euronews later today, was on CNN earlier. But what they do is they take existing structures in Ukraine and they convert them, for example, a university dormitory, to temporary housing for internally displaced people. But the really cool thing, and this goes to a really, really important point I wanted to make, Melinda, is that what they do is they involve local businesses. They buy furniture from local companies. They get local contractors. So you create kind of a circular economy. This is really important because a lot of people think of humanitarian aid as something that has to come from the outside or something that's very extractive. It doesn't have to be that way. It can actually be a stimulant. So that's why I'm so excited in a war where we've had not that much great news to see things like this happening. It's Ukrainians helping Ukrainians. And this goes to the points that were made earlier about the seeming incapacity or inability of the United Nations to really step up to this war. As you know, I'm a former UN insider, and I have to say I was disgusted by the UN's behavior early on in this conflict. The fact that they couldn't even bring themselves to call this a war. They couldn't even bring themselves to call out the aggressor, Russia. And they were very slow. Our co-speakers were right in terms of stepping up to the plate. They did not actually believe, they were told, but they didn't believe that the war would happen here. Hence, we didn't have that crucial mobilization, pre-deployment of supplies and people. There's another important point, Melinda, if I can. The ICRC actually has had more than a century of sterling work around the world. They're the ones that do negotiate the prisoner swaps. They're the ones that negotiate ceasefires in places like Syria or elsewhere. I think there's some confusion there. Some people are confusing Red Crescent or Red Cross societies with them and with the International Federation of the Red Cross. So please be careful, everyone, in terms of doing your research, because the ICRC does very important behind the scenes work that hardly anyone sees, but has actually made a big difference since the war started here in 2014. Finally, Melinda, you asked about people going abroad and wanting to come back. Yeah, I actually, a lot of the folks I've talked to, at least here in Western Ukraine, we have at least 250,000 here in Lviv and lots in other smaller centers around this region, is that as much as possible, they'd like to stay here. But the one point they make is we want to be productive. We want to go back to work. And, you know, in one more point, we came into this war, you know, I'm talking from a macroeconomic point of view, with already COVID really slamming world economies, and also things like container costs really, really high, if you could even find one. So a lot of folks are still hurting, not only Ukraine, but outside. So that's why I'm really advocating that we look at all areas possible where Ukrainians can help each other and support organizations like Kochata.org, who are using Ukrainians to help the IDPs here. It's really, really crucial.
Thanks, Michael. A lot of great points. I love that. Please put that link in there. That's
Sure
fantastic. Good reporting. Andriy, I know you wanted to respond, and there was a question. Why shouldn't contributions not be made to the International Red Cross? That was a question from Neolina. Go ahead, Andriy.
No, it was my question to Michael. I mean, I'm not underestimating Red Cross actions in peacekeeping, but what I'm asking is, do you know how much humanitarian aid has they brought into the country? That's first question. And second question, wasn't it the head of the ICRC who went to Russia, to Moscow, and to meet Lavrov and discuss humanitarian shelter in Rostov for Ukrainian refugees?
Yeah,
I wasn't commenting on the peacekeeping, though. I was only commenting on those issues.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying that there are different Red Cross sections. You have the ICRC, the International Federation of the Red Cross, and then you have the National Red Cross Societies, including the Ukrainian one. But in terms of the ICRC, they're the ones who do that diplomatic behind the scenes work. But I agree. I mean, look, I said it publicly on air that I thought it was very politically risky and unwise for Peter Maurer to go to Moscow like that, and I thought it was very unwise for Secretary Guterres also to go to Moscow, not only because very little came of it, but because also it's giving the Russians, Secretary Lavrov and President Putin platforms to make it look like they're statesmen when they're not. These are people who Western leaders described as war criminals. They call them for what they are. So let's be clear on that. I can, in terms of the UN.
I think both of us, Michael, I think both of us could forgive this to them if they would take people from Mariupol out to Russia and save their lives. Not to Ukraine, but just to Russia and save their lives. That would be the end of story.
Yeah, I think what's happening also on Mariupol is basically you have two streams. You have that very little trickle, to be honest, of people that are coming out under ICRC/UN stewardship, if we can put it that way. But then you have a lot more who the Russians are forcibly deporting, evacuating, putting through filtration centers. It's horrifying what's going on there. If you look at the lower end of the estimate, President Zelensky estimates about 500,000 deported, and that a lot of women and children and elderly. And at the upper end, what the Russians tell us is 1 million. And of course, this all brings us back to the decades ago when Ukrainians were forcibly deported, things like the liquidation of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, things like the Holodomor 32, 33, and don't get me started about how they're stealing grain, destroying grain silos. This is absolutely horrific right now.
Michael, on those numbers, so you said 500,000 Ukrainians have been deported, maybe up to 1 million. How many of them, to Russia, but how many of them eventually have gotten into Ukraine? Do we have a good number on that?
We don't know, but I mean, I can give you a very little vignette that was just in Espresso newspaper the other day. I mean, there was a 80-year-old woman from Mariupol, a granny, who was forcibly deported to Russia without anything. And fortunately, she remembered in her head, she had a close relative in Moscow, remembered her mobile phone number, called her and said, I'm stuck in Russia, come and get me. So they were actually able to locate her. But the family here is now trying to arrange that return of her to Ukraine. But it's very difficult, of course, because she has to exit the Russian Federation. But we also hear many credible stories of Ukrainians being sent to the Russian Far East, to very remote communities. So this is very, very worrisome.
Yeah, and it's of course impossible to track that down, right?
Exactly.
So it's unfortunately not getting enough attention. Andriy, I want to bring you back in here and ask you another pointed question. You've been sniffing around and looking into international organizations. How much aid is actually getting to Ukraine? There's been an outpouring, but is it getting to the right places? Is it stuck in warehouses? What have you been able to find?
Well, I was able to find that a lot of aid has been allocated, but a lot of aid has never left the warehouses. For example, Canadian stuff, and then a lot of European stuff. I'm not talking about the hundreds of billions of funds that were never used or never used.
Andriy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Say it again.
so they were so the so-called logistics cluster. This is where these these organizations are poorly organized per se, and then they join a thing called a logistics cluster, which makes it totally impossible to find a decision maker or somebody to talk to. And they make this Zoom calls for 100 people, 150 people, where they coordinate the coordinators. It's been really frustrating. So the thing is that they are trying to build up their own structures. Not, I don't know for what reason. They're avoiding to use governmental structures or private structures that have been established in the country. And therefore, the aid that is much needed in Mykolaiv, there is much needed in Kharkiv, it just doesn't get there. So this is the problem with those guys.
I think we need to say directly, state capacity in Ukraine is very high. And we have trust in the institutions, especially these volunteer networks we're talking about. Khalib, I was curious if you could say more. So Andriy said that he can move all of these goods and services, and then you guys are the wheels. You get it to these smaller places. How are you doing that? Is it on foot? Is it by bicycle? Is it by car? How do you actually make this happen?
So actually, we have we cooperate with the guys from Chernihiv. Actually, they launched a project. It was called Price. So currently, it works in that way. We have the mobile app, which volunteering installing on his mobile phone. And when the hub is ready to ship the humanitarian help to a specific people, so they drop it inside the mobile app. They receive the push notification. And this volunteer is able to go to the warehouse and then go to the people who is in need. This is like first what we use for that. We call you even if you ever in US have the Uber Eats, for example.
Yeah,
so
Uber Eats. We have Uber Eats. Okay.
Yes. So it works in this business process actually, but with the humanitarian aid. And the second one, we have a lot of volunteer drivers with the small cars. So they visit in our website and place the application that they are able to volunteer as a driver. And some of them are really great people because they're ready to go to a front line, not to the front line, but to the locations which is near the front line, and they know the roads, like not the secret but not the main roads, how to get there to a specific city. So we're working with them, and again, how you can help even with those. These people are ready to go, but they need the fuel, and we need to buy this fuel. And again, with these kind of donations, if you donate to the humanitarian platforms, donate to SPDM, so we are able to buy fuel and then to go to deliver these goods. And the third one, of course, people get into our hubs and receiving the help right there. So
Gotcha.
this is like three types. And huge logistics is provided by the transport companies which we're partnering with.
Super, thank you. Andriy, go ahead.
Just want to shout out to Khalib and to SPDM and to other volunteers that you guys are doing a fantastic and a dangerous job. When Chernihiv was still occupied, we were sending through the volunteer network. We were sending aid into Chernihiv, and people would use boats to deliver food because it was completely without food. And unfortunately, 6 of 7 volunteers were should I say executed, not even shot, but executed. And this is a very much needed job, and it's very dangerous. And I would like to say thank you once again to what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Khalib, hats off. You guys are amazing. You have our respect, and wow, I didn't realize that. So my friends, we have 13 minutes. We have 16 questions. If you have a question, feel free to dump it in the chat. I would not write it in French. My high school French is not very good, but write it in English, please, and I will be glad to read it. Hannah Thoburn, a good friend from Capitol Hill, says, for Khalib and Andriy, are there problems with cold storage for items like insulin or other medicines? Do you have anything more to say about that, Andriy? And you're muted.
Yes, we are using existing distributors of farm products. and farm producers in the country, like Farmak, like Darnica, and we used their warehouses to store insulin. Funny enough, a couple of weeks ago, we received more insulin than we expected. We didn't have enough cold storage, so we had to call Coca-Cola, and we would have insulin stored in branded red branded fridges, Coke. It was so much of life irony in it, like the diabetes drug in a Coca-Cola fridge. Mind-blowing. Nobody could make this up, I promise you. But we're dealing with this. Cold chain is working. It's not perfect, but it is working, and it's available.
Super duper. You're going to have to keep notes of all the ironic things you're seeing, Andriy. You're going to have enough material for a book. Another question from Hannah Goodwin. Are there certain areas, you mentioned Kharkiv and Nikolaev, that are not getting enough aid? Could you say more about them, and why do you think aid's not getting there?
So, especially for Kharkiv, I can say that we have one of the most powerful hub in Kharkiv, and there are volunteers of Kharkiv, different volunteering organizations, not only the SPDM, united in Kharkiv, and this is a really one of the greatest examples of how they unite and building the effective system they operate. They operate even with the mayor of Kharkiv and with the local government of Kharkiv as a city. So we have a logistic issues solved with the Kharkiv. So currently, from the SPDM perspective, we're operating there and like with other regions, though they not just cut off. From
okay, super. Thank you, Michael. Do you think, this is from your friend Cedric, do you think President Zelensky and Putin will be able to meet on neutral grounds?
No, I don't think so. President Zelensky, I think, was asked recently by Fareed Zakaria what will it take to end this war, and he replied, well, whatever it takes to save lives is what I will do. But I think we've reached a point of no return where no Ukrainian president can legitimately meet with Vladimir Putin and negotiate a peace agreement. Why is that? Is because the Russians can't be believed to honor their commitments. The nature of a commitment, like a promise, is that you honor it. And when it comes to humanitarian corridors, when it comes to the mini ceasefires that the OIC and others have tried to negotiate since 2014, they have not worked. So, and the other thing, of course, is if an agreement were to be reached, who would be the security guarantors? Turkey, perhaps, Israel, perhaps a few other countries. Again, I don't think that will work. So we're not in a very good place in terms of humanity and in terms of we're at that place. So I think the West has to rethink its strategy when it comes to Ukraine and what it will take to end this war.
Thanks a lot. A question for Hlib. This is from John Sullivan. He says, many of the smaller villages with less than 10,000 people are receiving little what they need. Is there a way to have a centralized system to expedite those orders from those villages? Are you guys doing that?
So our system as an IT solution is centralized. So we're receiving all of the applications inside one system. And as I said before, we even be building more. So we currently trying to, I don't like the word centralized, but trying to gather all the applications from the other platforms currently operating inside the country to understand the global country situation, and with the specific cities and villages all around the country, how they're receiving that. And by solving the situation in a specific village, so our hub not only operate in the specific city, usually this is a regional center, our hub situated in regional centers, but they also operate in the whole region and delivering humanitarian help to them. And the guys the team is writing in the chat, so we have like more than 700 drivers, volunteers who is running all over the country, helping us to deliver the goods, deliver the humanitarian help.
Super. Andriy, I see your hand, and can you respond? And also, this is a really good question from John McKinley. He says, could you please describe the preference for financial donations over collected and donated items? Many Americans feel connected to causes by giving actual goods like sweaters, blankets, canned goods, and do not realize the logistical challenges on the receiving end. And there's also, I'm going to be frank, there's mistrust. If you tell me to send $1,000 to the Ukrainian army, there's no way I'm going to do that, right? So help us understand why we should send money rather than goods, please.
All right. First of all, I want to say that SPDM has a call center that is collecting tens of thousands of calls from all over the country, and they're receiving those requests so they could tell what is needed where the most. And this is very important because they keep a CRM on, and they publish this data. Hopefully you will make it public, Leap, as well. This is very important, so that people from around the world could actually see, what is needed most and where. Coming back to the in-kind contributions, we are now developing a small program with a fund called Razom in the States. Everybody knows Razom, where there will be a drop-off point for those who are definitely never ever are going to donate. So you can drop off stuff, and you will have a list of the items that we are going to send to Ukraine with air freight and the items that will go with sea freight. So all of the blankets, sweaters, and everything, all of the rest of the garbage will be sent by sea, and we will obviously be thankful. However, most needed things are medications, are personal hygienes, and is food. It does make zero sense to send this by air freight because we're talking about $2.5 per pound of air freight cost, and it kills all the economy of sending those goods. It's actually much more expensive than the goods are themselves. So I suggest finding a recommended, trusted source of for donations, requesting a report, and actually donating to buy medication or to buy food locally. Again, what Gleb said is very important. When you donate and people are buying stuff from the country, you are relaunching economy. You are helping local producers, farmers, etc., etc. These guys are having trouble, and we need to support them.
Absolutely. And if it helps, I give my personal stamp of approval to both of these organizations, and I give and work with Andriy Stavnitser, and I trust what he's doing. Michael, I want you are the only representative from North America on the panel, and a great Canadian. I'm a little perplexed, though. Could you reflect on Canada's contribution? They have a huge diaspora. What has been the contribution, and is it enough?
Yeah, well, the Ukrainian diaspora has been working very hard, not only on the political diplomatic front, but also collecting humanitarian aid. And I had a call with diaspora colleagues about a week ago. And I have to be honest with you, there was a lot of frustration expressed on why there seems to be a bit of a bottleneck, why things are not getting prioritized. I think it was Razom for Ukraine that has raised $40 million. They gave a presentation here yesterday in Lviv, and I've got to say, I was pretty blown away by their not only passion, but by their creativity. And what's interesting about them, and there's a few other organizations springing up that are doing a lot for Ukraine, is these are actually Ukrainians born in Ukraine for the most part. And then they moved to the United States or North America and, got professional degrees there, or they worked in big companies. And now they've stepped up and they're doing this. So that's really, really good to see. And I think they have a rather deeper understanding of what is needed here. They have more personal contacts. They were talking about a huge, like colleagues on the call here, network of volunteers in Ukraine that can work quickly to get around these bottlenecks. In a war, bottlenecks happen very, very quickly, shifting front line and all that. So what I would suggest is that, and with all due respect to diaspora leaders, and all of us here agreed that we wouldn't be too judgmental, those of us who have stayed here. But I have to say, one of the best things to reduce this bottleneck is for the diaspora leaders to actually come here, at least to Lviv, meet with Ukrainian leaders here, with stakeholders, not to the Polish border, but actually on Ukrainian territory. Many other world leaders have gone as far as Kyiv, and I think we have to start seeing the same from our Ukrainian diaspora leaders. I put that as diplomatically as I possibly can.
Well done. But what about the government itself? So you have a very prominent member of the Canadian Ukrainian diaspora in your government. Has your government done enough? Have they been forward leaning enough with aid, with weapons? Would you give them an A, a B, a C?
Absolutely not. They've not done enough. I think what had happened early on, despite the prominent presence of Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, is that Prime Minister Trudeau insisted just a few weeks ago in a speech in Berlin that the best tools, the best kind of weapons to use against the Russian Federation are sanctions. And as we have found out, they have been very, very ineffective. So I think it took them a while to step up and start sending lethal weapons. The other thing the Canadians can do is send their diplomats from Warsaw back to Kiev, back to their desks. We now have something like 30 embassies that have resumed work, and even the Americans were here the other day. They're doing day trips from Warsaw. We can, the few Canadians left here just cannot understand the reluctance of the Canadian government to come here. And don't forget, this is not only symbolically important to Ukrainians. Ukraine was the first Western country to recognize Ukraine's independence, but it also allows diplomats to interact with stakeholders, with government, with people like Olga Stefanishyna on the ground. This is not the type of work that can be done remotely. You know what, Melinda, the diplomats I admire the most are the ones who run to the fire, not from the fire. And sad to say, this is what we saw in the beginning days of this conflict from our Canadian diplomats. Perhaps they're under pressure from Global Affairs Canada, I don't know, but they need to come back to Kiev immediately.
Thank you so much, Michael. Hlib and Andriy, we so admire what you guys are doing. Keep it up. I'm going to give both of you the last word. Hlib, any final thoughts?
Yes, I would like to one more message about the SPDM and how we operate. So just today we have a topic as humanitarian help, but to help Ukraine is not only about the humanitarian help. So it's also about to think in long term to how to receive this crisis currently, how to solve the issues we have. And people lost the work, small businesses are suffering without the workers and without the resources. So SPDM is even more than just a humanitarian help. Is also, we have a SPDM shelters, so we help in the shelters where people who leave their houses and moved inside the country. Also, we launching the project about the entrepreneurs, helping the small businesses. And we have one more project, SPDM DITI or SPDM Children's, to help children who had left their places and who needed probably psychological help or help like that. So we will post more and more updates about our projects we launching here, and we're trying to systematically solve this crisis in unfortunately in long term and strategically thinking. So that's the message what I would like to give to our audience, and I'll be happy to share updates about that. If you give us this possibility, give us a platform, that would be great for us. Definitely.
Absolutely. You can count on us. We would love to write an article about you and bring more attention in the English language environment. Thank you for what you're doing. You are showing the world the best of Ukraine. You have our respect and our admiration. Andriy, the last word is yours, sir. Go for it.
Oh, it's my honor. Melinda, I'd like to say that we're facing unprecedented war, not because I'm Ukrainian and because I love my country, but because we're facing a genocide in the middle of Europe in the 21st century. So if you listen closely to Putin's speech, he was questioning the very existence of Ukraine. And if we do not stop if we don't stop Russians with our hands, Baltics could be next, Poland could be next. Other countries could be next. We see on national state TV in Russia that they discuss how many seconds it takes for a nuclear rocket to reach UK. So we are paying the biggest price, but it's important to understand that we are safeguarding this continent's future. And it's even if you're listening to us from abroad, from across the ocean, and you have not enough financial capabilities, etc., please write a letter to your senator. Please write a letter to your MP. Ask for more weapons to Ukraine. Increase pressure towards Russia on sanctions and help towards Ukraine. If we do not win this war, this is going to be a dramatic consequence for the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, Hlib. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Olga. Thank you for joining us. John Sullivan wants to know if he can come and help. You can absolutely come and help. Andriy is looking for volunteers. Hlib is looking for volunteers, especially if you have computer skills. There are many, many ways to get involved. You don't just have to write a check. I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and anyone who wants to help, it can reach out to me, and I will be glad to connect you with these guys. I'm dropping it in the chat right now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. God bless Ukraine. And please join us next time. Next week, we will have more Ukraine content. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Atlantic Council.
Thank you.